down the west hallway.
Thank you. Camp. Man, I think it's such an important thing. I mean, the world's kind of crazy if you haven't noticed. So I'm like, if we can get a hold of these kids, 8 years old, come on, somebody. That's the way to do it. Let's just keep them on the path that leads to life. Amen. Amen. Hey, one more announcement before we jump into the message today. But on September 8th at 7 p.m., it's a Friday night, I believe, we're going to gather in this room, and we're just going to have a time to honor my mom. Before we transition this lead pastor role, we just want to take a night just to honor her and encourage her. She's off to teach children's class. We actually did, the idea sort of came from, my uncle did this thing, his wife planned it for him for his 60th birthday, and we basically just like got together, and we had dessert, and the idea was everyone would say the things to him that we usually wait for their funeral to say. And it was really beautiful, because it's kind of ridiculous how little we encourage each other until we're gone, and then we say all these beautiful things, and we don't just say it when they're there to actually receive encouragement from it. So we're going to do basically that on September 8th. So I'd encourage you can pull out your calendar, toss it on your calendar for September 8th at 7 p.m. here in this room. We're going to be inviting lots of people from way back, decades ago, lots of family, and goodness, we have lots of family. It's going to be a really beautiful night. So I really encourage you guys to come. I think it would mean a lot to her as we bless her. She'll be preaching her last message that Sunday, the 10th. And it's going to be a great time just honoring her and being with her. But Elise and I are super excited. This week we were doing lots of prep and lots of planning for things that are coming in this new year in January. And we're just super excited for what God's doing. And we really think that the Lord is orchestrating. He's building some structure. He's bringing some ideas to begin to house a harvest. And we're really excited for what the Lord is doing. So it's been lots of planning, lots of work, lots of meetings, but I believe that the Lord is on it, and that there's some new things that are coming, some things that we've never done, some things that we're resurrecting, and it's going to be awesome. I'm really, really, really excited for what the Lord is doing. How's summer going, everybody? We awake this morning? Come on. God bless the campers. If you're watching online, hopefully your camping trip was awesome, but worship was cool, and you missed that, so bummer for you. Hey, today I want to talk out of 2 Timothy. You can turn to 2 Timothy chapter 1. I want to look at this encouragement that Paul is giving Timothy towards the end of his life. And this morning, I'm going to do a little bit of a shorter message. I felt like there's something for us in some ministry time after the word. So we're going to go back into worship and do some ministry. And this morning, I just kind of felt this prophetic inclination for us to fan into flame again. Fan into flame again. We're going to look at it in 2 Timothy chapter 1, but let me set the stage a little bit. Paul is about to die. Paul is kind of essentially on his deathbed, essentially. He's in prison. He's awaiting his execution. He knows he's going to be executed. And so he's really at the end of his life. He's writing from a jail cell. Honestly, one of the coolest things about the book of 2 Timothy to me isn't any words that are on the page. It's just the fact that Paul, at the very end of his life, is just outpouring these last words of wisdom to his young spiritual son, Timothy. Even at the end of the book, Paul says, hey, Timothy, when you come and visit me, remember to bring me some more pen and paper, because Paul was just hammering out letters all the way through to the end of his life. Paul has been abandoned by all of his friends. Everyone's forsaken him because they don't want to be persecuted. They don't want to be associated with Paul. So they've kind of all cut ties with him except for Timothy. So Paul's waiting to be killed. He's been left by all of his friends. And Timothy's kind of the only guy left. And Timothy is this young man. Paul meets him in Acts chapter 16. in Lystra. He knows his grandmother. He knows his mother. He meets Timothy. He's like, this guy's a great young man. He's full of integrity. He's full of passion. He's gifted. And Paul brings him on board and makes him this mentor, this mentee, this protege to Paul's ministry. And I say all of that to say this. Like, I think that the message I'm going to preach today is important. And I think that the Lord's in it. And I think he wants to do something with it. But if this was the last thing that I ever got to tell you, it probably would not be this message. But what Paul is writing here to Timothy, this is it. Like, this is I just want us to, as we open the Bible here, feel the gravity of a man who's about to be martyred, writing to this young man who is incredibly important to him. He's got a deep love for him. He's got a deep admiration for him. He's walked through ministry with him. He's been through all sorts of things with this man, Timothy. And Timothy says, in the book of 2 Timothy, it says this. We're going to start in verse 3. I thank God whom I serve, as did my ancestors, with a clear conscience, as I remember you constantly in my prayers night and day. As I remember your tears, I long to see you. So there's this deep love between Paul and Timothy. Timothy's going through it. His mentor is going to be killed. His spiritual father is going to be killed. As I remember your tears, I long to see you that I might be filled with joy. I'm reminded of your sincere faith, a faith that dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and then in your mother Eunice, and now I'm sure dwells in you as well. For this reason, so for what reason? For the reason that Timothy has faith. Timothy has faith that lives in him. For this reason, I remind you this. Fan into flame the gift of God, which is in you through the laying on of my hands. For God didn't give you a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power, love, and a sound mind, or a self-control. Paul is encouraging Timothy with this. He's saying, Timothy, there is a deposit of faith that's inside of you that's been in you from passed down through some generations. We learn in the book of Acts that Timothy's mother was Jewish, so he would have been kind of half raised in this Jewish faith, this Jewish practice, and his father was Greek. So he's kind of got his feet in both ponds a little bit. And Timothy has this faith that's passed down from grandma to mom to him. And Paul's saying, Timothy, you have faith and you have a gift. You have faith and you have some deposits that my ministry has put in you. And now, Timothy, what I want you to do is I want you to use that faith because of this, because of what? Because of the faith. I want you to begin to fan into flame the gift of God. And this really encourages me because what this tells me is that Timothy has some highs and lows. Paul is encouraging this young man who's following him. He's saying, Timothy, I know this is really hard right now. I need you to fan into flame again. I need you to begin to fan the flame. I need you to begin to lean into prayer. I need you to begin to take that faith that you have and let it blow on the embers of your soul and fan into flame again. And Zion, I felt prophetically, it's time to fan into flame again. Paul's talking about these gifts of the Spirit. And 1 Corinthians 12 says this. We're not going to go deep into the gifts of the Spirit. Again, I'm trying to get to ministry this morning. I think a lot of us are familiar with the gifts of the Spirit. If you're not, 1 Corinthians 12 and Romans 12, you can read about them. But I want to read these couple verses here because they really lay a foundation for what these gifts are for. It says this, there are different kinds of gifts, but the same Spirit. There are different kinds of service, but the same Lord, different kinds of working. But listen, but in all of them and in everyone, it's the same God at work. So Paul's saying no one gets an excuse. No one did not receive a gift. God is a good father, and on Christmas morning, for a good father, all the children get gifts. He doesn't leave one out. Everyone gets gifts. And then verse 7 says this. He says it again. To each one, the manifestation of a Spirit is given for the common good. So here's a big idea with spiritual gifts. We are all given them, and they're not for just us, but they are for the body of Christ that we are in. They are for the church that we are in. Let me put it to you this way. There is things that God has put inside of you that Zion needs. It's making sense to 3 people. The church is not all about the pastor. It's not all about the worship leader. It's not all about the elders. It's not all about department heads and people that have marketable talents. No, every single one of us has gifts and abilities and resources and talents that God has put inside of us that he has not given us to keep in quiet or keep in privacy, but he has called us that these are for the common good. These are things that we actually participate in. We do. And Paul tells to this young man, Timothy, who probably at this time wasn't really all that young, maybe pushing kind of towards 40. Not that that's super old, y'all. It's just not 16. But this younger man, who he's saying, hey, Timothy, there's gifts that are in you, and I need you to fan them into flame again. I need you to begin to blow on the embers again. And I think there's a process to the gifts of God. And I don't know if you know this, but your new lead pastors are, we got a very close second place at a 3-part Lord of the Rings trivia tournament. And I'm not going to say that we carried, because we did not. Caleb carried, but we were there. We were there. And I think we maybe would have gotten like 4 more questions wrong if Caleb just was on the team by himself. But we were all kind of there. You know, a lot of times leadership is just knowing who to ask to be on your team. And when they were like, it's a Lord of the Rings tournament, I'm like, Caleb, we need you, buddy. We need you to come in. He blew me away. But I want to talk about these gifts, this process of the gifts from our 4 lovely hobbits. Good old Sam, Merry, Pippin, Frodo, come on. There's this scene in the Lord of the Rings, I'm gonna talk about the movies, where the 4 hobbits, Frodo gets the ring and the wraiths are after him. They're trying to get the ring. This is their whole purpose, these bad guys, is to get the ring of power. And the 4 hobbits, they make it out of the Shire and they go across the ferry. They go to Bree and they're running out of Bree. And Aragorn leads them out. They're gonna go try to find the wise elves. What do we do? But before they get there, they go to this watchtower, Weathertop, or if you're a nerd, the watchtower of Amansul. Because hey, we got second place by only like 2 points. We were real close. We have won prizes for our knowledge of Lord of the Rings. So I do know what the watchtower is called. They go to the watchtower and Aragorn pulls out these 4 short swords and he gives them to the hobbits. They are stupid, and they make a campfire on the top. If you're calling spoiler alerts, by the way, this movie's been out for like 22 years. You cannot call spoiler alerts on a movie that has been out for decades, and the book's been out even longer. So no spoiler alert warning coming. They make the fire, and the wraiths find them. And there's this really funny moment where they all draw their swords. And there's all these bad guys that are like master swordsmen, and they're these little tiny hobbits who literally just got their swords. And Sam tries to attack, doesn't go so well. He gets knocked to the side. Merry and Pippin do their best. They get knocked to the side. Frodo just falls down. Everyone says Frodo's great. He falls down just an obscene amount of times in those movies. Anytime anything gets remotely dangerous, Frodo's like, this is a great time to fall. I'm just gonna fall now. Frodo falls down. And Aragorn comes and he saves the hobbits, and then they go on their Fellowship of the Ring journey. And then we see the hobbits, they're practicing their swords with Boromir on the sides of the mountain. And then comes the moment where they actually, at the end of the movie, they're going into battle and all of the hobbits, Sam fights Shelob, the giant spider, my least favorite part in the whole trilogy. I close my eyes for parts because I hate the massive spider. When I was a kid and I saw it, I checked behind every curtain in the bathroom, making sure Shelob wasn't back there waiting for me. And Merry and Pippin, they go to battle, they do all these things, and they go to battle and they succeed. And when I look at our spiritual gifts, I think a lot of times we're a little bit like these hobbits. And we get our gifts, right? We get our short sword. We're like, yes, the Lord has given me a gift. And that means that I am now awesome. And I can do anything. And I am a master of this gift. And then we try to fight a ring wraith with it, like 0.5 seconds into our gift. And we just get destroyed. And it does not work. But there's a process to our gifts. Here you go, ready? We discover them, then we develop them, and then we're deployed in them. We discover, we develop, we deploy. And a lot of times, we try to skip develop. We get the gift, and then we're like, sweet, it's time to be deployed. Let's fight something. And then we're like these hobbits that don't really know how to use our gift yet. I feel like I have a gift to preach. So let's get on that pulpit and let's go for it. It's like, well, how many messages have you written that were for no one? You just wrote them because you felt like God gave you something and you just started to write. Or if you're me, you mowed the lawn, and as I mowed the lawn, I preached some messages because there was a loud white noise so the neighbors couldn't hear. And I'd be out mowing the lawn, practicing preaching scriptures. Because I felt like God gave me a gift, and I didn't just want to run into battle, but I wanted to develop. Or you feel like the Lord's given you a grace to sing and lead people into the presence of God, and you're ready to hop up onto a stage, but you're not ready to go to your house and pick up a guitar and start to learn and start to pour out your heart to no one else but Him. There's a process of development, or like what I want to get back to today, there's a process where sometimes development isn't in front of anybody, but it's on the side of a mountain with Boromir. There's sometimes where development looks like what Jesus says, going to your room and shutting the door and starting to cry out to God again. It looks like sometimes what Paul told Timothy, fan into flame again the things that I've put in you, the anointings, the callings, the giftings that I've placed inside of you. Listen, God can give you a gift that you don't use. That can happen. And Paul tells Timothy, those giftings are far too valuable to not be fanned into flame. Today, I honestly was writing out this message, and I wrote out some great practical content, some great points, some things that I learned through studying and reading, and honestly, I deleted all of it. Because I think we know, I think a lot of us know. I think we have an opportunity here where, by and large, I feel like a lot of us have been in church a lot, and if you haven't been, then let me bullet point for you here. If you want to know your gifts, prayer, worship, the word, and people. Lean into those things. Lean into a local church. Lean into prayer at home and worship at home, and start to read the Bible. And when it doesn't make sense, welcome to reading the Bible and dig in a little bit deeper until it begins to make sense, and watch some trustworthy teachers and begin to understand and glean from some people. But I think for many of us, it's not that we don't know the tools. It's just that fire's kind of gone down to an ember. Worship team, you want to come back up? told you all I was trying to be short today. I want to get back to this moment here. Move over here. You know, as a church body, if we take Jesus out of the center of our lives, we're falling apart. It won't work. We can build as many things we want to build and try to do all the things that we want to try to do, but really, do you know what grows a church in the way that Elise and I want to grow a church? It's a room full of really hungry people. It's a room, if I can use the fire analogy, full of combustible material. Full of people that when we gather, we are expectant and waiting for what God is going to do. We are a people who are pouring oil on our lives, where we are saturating ourselves in prayer and in worship, not just for 90 minutes on a Sunday, but Sunday to Saturday, we are pouring oil on the altars of our life for God to come and consume, and we're not pouring water on it, making it more difficult for God to come and move because we're putting roadblocks in the way. And today I just felt like, I know this isn't that much of a message, but Zion, it's time to fan into flame again. It's time to be passionate again. I'm going to talk more about passion and the power of passion next week. We're going to talk about our good friend, our wee little man, Zacchaeus, all these names floating around. Our wee little man, Zacchaeus, and the power of passion. But man, I just want God more than I want cool thoughts or a better building or more people. I just want him to move. I want a church full of the power of God before it's full of the people of God. Man, we've gotten some prophetic words about God filling this room again, and that's cool, but I don't want to invite people over for dinner and not have anything to feed them. Can we, if you're of able body, can we come to the front? I just want them. I just want them to fill us again. And I love the summer. And if I can be frank, sometimes I kind of hate the summer. Sometimes I feel like we get into vacation mode, not just in our work or our school, but in our walk with Jesus. And he becomes 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th down the list. And I just want to burn again. I want him to fill us fresh and new again. Do you want to know why those hobbits ran into battle? It wasn't because they suddenly became master swordsmen and they were trying to impress the lady hobbits and they wanted to go into battle. It's because they were really passionate about the mission. It's because they had a passion in their heart for the mission of destroying the ring. Do you want to know why Timothy stayed in ministry after his spiritual father and mentor got martyred a brutal death? It wasn't because he really liked leadership and pastoring a church was kind of fun and convenient and he was just a good communicator. No. It was because he was passionate about the mission and he fanned into flame the gift of God. When he grew weary and when he got tired, listen to me. There is an aspect, like I believe in the sovereignty of the Lord that he places things in us. I believe that the gifts that he's put inside of you are a sovereign design and that it is the providence of the Lord that has put some things inside of you. But I believe that there is a partnering with that providence where we fan into flame because we say, God, I want you. Is there anyone else hungry in the room? Come on, it's a small Sunday, but what does it matter? When you start a fire, you don't start with logs. when you start something, a lot of times you start small. And I would rather start as a small, burning church than a huge, cold one. Can faith start to rise? Let's just close our eyes and let's just begin to lean into some prayer. I'm